You realize these are for your back paws, don't you?
Once upon a time, in a kingdom of rolling green hills and golden sun, there lived an old miller. He had worked hard all his life, but when he passed away, he had little to leave behind for his 3 sons. His worldly goods consisted of his mill, his donkey, and a peculiar cat. The division of the inheritance was swift and simple. They did not even call for a lawyer, who would have likely eaten up all their poor patrimony.
I'll take the mill. It's only right.
And the donkey is mine.
Is mine.
But what about me?
The eldest son took the mill, ensuring he would always have a trade. The second son took the donkey, ensuring he would always have a beast of burden. This left the youngest son with nothing but the cat. The poor lad sat on a mossy stone by the riverbank, his head in his hands. "My brothers may join forces and earn a handsome living," he lamented to the open air. "But as for me, once I have eaten my cat and made a muff of his skin to keep my hands warm in winter, I shall die of hunger."
What hope is left?
The cat, who had been licking his paws nearby and pretending not to listen, suddenly stopped. He sat up straight, his green eyes flashing with an intelligence the boy had never noticed before.
Do not be alarmed, my friend. I shall make you a Marquis, and we shall be rich.
"Do not afflict yourself so, my master," said the cat in a calm, dignified voice. The miller's son nearly fell off his rock. You can speak?" "I can do a great deal more than speak, provided you give me the chance," the cat replied, smoothing
Listen
his
closely,
whiskers.
for I shall make you a Marquis. We start by conquering Carabas.
A marquis!
"You need only give me a bag and have a pair of boots made for me, boots strong enough to walk through the brambles. If you do this, you will see that your portion of the inheritance is not so poor as you imagine." The young man was skeptical. However, he had often seen the cat play cunning tricks to catch rats and mice, hanging by his heels or hiding in the meal to feign death.
He said you make the finest boots in the land, and we require the very best for our travels.
With no other hope on the horizon, the boy spent his last few coins to commission a cobbler for a pair of small, sturdy leather boots. When the boots arrived, the cat pulled them on with a great flourish. He hung the bag around his neck, holding the drawstrings with his front paws. He looked at his reflection in the river, adjusted his whiskers, and marched off into the woods. Puss in Boots had a plan. Puss went directly to a warren where a great number of rabbits were known to gather. He placed bran and thistles into his bag and stretched himself out as if he were dead. He waited patiently for some young, innocent rabbit who had little knowledge of the traps of the world to poke its nose into the bag. Scarcely had he settled when he had what he wanted. A rash young rabbit jumped into the bag. Puss immediately drew the strings tight, capturing his prize. Proud of his prey, he marched straight to the king's palace and asked to speak with his majesty. He was shown upstairs to the king's apartment. Puss bowed low, sweeping his tail with a reverence that surprised the courtiers. "Sire," Puss said, presenting the rabbit, "I have brought you a rabbit from the warren of my noble lord, the Marquis of Carabas." This was the title Puss had invented for the miller's son.
Ah, gentlemen, greetings from my master, the magnificent Marquis of Carabas. He sends this humble gift to your most gracious king.
The king, who loved a good stew, was delighted. "Tell your master," said the king, "that I thank him and that he gives me a great deal of pleasure." Over the next 2 months, Puss continued the charade.
Oh, Puss, my boy, this is absolutely wonderful. Your master is truly a remarkable fellow.
One day, he hid in a cornfield with his open bag and caught 2 fine partridges. Another day, he caught a pheasant. Each time, he went to the palace and presented the game as gifts from the mysterious Marquis of Carabas. The king grew quite fond of this mysterious Marquis. He imagined a wealthy nobleman, generous and skilled in the hunt. Even the king's daughter, a beautiful princess who had seen everything the world had to offer, became intrigued by this unseen lord who sent such consistent tribute. Meanwhile, the miller's son remained in his humble cottage, confused but well fed, for Puss always brought back small scraps of food or coin given as tips by the king's guards.
I think she will like me, Puss. The princess, I mean.
"Why are we doing this, Puss?" asked the boy one evening. "Patience, master," Puss purred, polishing his boots. "The groundwork is laid. Tomorrow your fortune changes." The next day, Puss learned that the king was to take a drive along the riverbank with his daughter, the most beautiful princess in the world. "If you will follow my advice," told Puss to his master, "your fortune is made. You must go and bathe in the river at the exact spot I show you, and then leave the rest to me. Do not ask questions, just trust the boots." The miller's son, having nothing to lose, did exactly as he was told. He stripped off his tattered clothes and waded into the water. As he bathed, the royal carriage approached, the wheels clattering on the cobblestones and the golden crests gleaming in the sun. Suddenly, Puss began to cry out with all his might. "Help! Help! My lord the Marquis of Carabas is drowning! Help!" At this noise, the king put his head out of the carriage window. He recognized the cat who had brought him so much game. He immediately ordered his guards to run quickly to the assistance of the Marquis of Carabas. While they were pulling the poor miller's son out of the river, Puss approached the carriage and bowed to the king. He put on a sorrowful face. "Sire," he whispered, "while my master was bathing, some thieves came by and stole his clothes, though I cried 'Stop thief!' as loud as I could. Now the noble Marquis cannot present himself to you." In truth, the cunning cat had hidden the shabby clothes under a great stone. The king, horrified that such a generous lord should be embarrassed, commanded the officers of his wardrobe to fetch one of his finest suits for the Marquis of Carabas. When the miller's son was dressed in the velvet and silk of the king's wardrobe, he looked every bit a gentleman. He was naturally handsome and well-built, and the fine clothes emphasized his noble bearing. The king received him with 1,000 courtesies. The princess, upon seeing the young man, found him very much to her liking. When the Marquis cast 2 or 3 respectful and somewhat tender glances at her, she fell madly in love. The king invited the Marquis to step into the carriage and join them on their drive. The miller's son sat in the carriage, stunned by his luck, trying hard to look like a Marquis. Puss, delighted that his plan was succeeding, marched on ahead of the carriage.
Nonsense, my boy, you look splendid. Why, this velvet alone must be worth a fortune. We must celebrate properly when we arrive at the castle.
He came upon a group of peasants mowing a meadow. Puss drew his sword, a tiny thing but sharp, and looked at them sternly. "My good people who are mowing hay, if you do not tell the king that the meadow you are mowing belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as fine as herbs for the pot."
Listen closely, you overgrown weeds. This land is now the property of the Marquis. You will inform the king of this, or you will deal with me.
The peasants, terrified by this talking cat in boots, promised to obey. Moments later, the king's carriage passed by. "What a fine meadow," the king remarked. "Who does this land belong to?" "To the Marquis of Carabas," the mowers cried in unison. "You have a magnificent estate, Marquis," said the king to the miller's son. The young man merely smiled and nodded, playing the part perfectly. Puss ran further ahead and met some reapers harvesting wheat. "My good people who are reaping," he shouted, "if you do not say that all this corn belongs to the Marquis of Carabas, you shall be chopped as fine as herbs for the pot." When the king passed a few minutes later and asked who owned the vast fields of grain, the reapers replied, "To the Marquis of Carabas." The king was astonished at the vast wealth of the Marquis. The miller's son began to believe it himself, sitting straighter every mile. Finally, Puss arrived at a magnificent castle. It was a fortress of stone and stained glass, far grander than even the king's palace. This castle belonged to an ogre, the richest ever known, for all the lands the king had passed through truly belonged to him. Puss knew who lived there and what the ogre was capable of. He marched up to the gate and asked to speak with the master, saying he could not pass so near the castle without paying his respects. The ogre received him as civilly as an ogre could, which is to say he didn't eat him immediately, and invited him to sit. "I have been assured," said Puss, feigning admiration, "that you have the gift of being able to change yourself into all sorts of creatures. For example, that you can transform yourself into a lion or an elephant." "That is true," replied the ogre gruffly, "and to prove it, you shall see me become a lion." In an instant, the ogre vanished, and in his place stood a massive lion, roaring so loudly that the window shook. Puss was so terrified that he scrambled up the curtains to the ceiling, scratching his boots in the process. When the ogre returned to his natural form, Puss came down, trembling. "Whatever shall I do?" he gasped. "I was so frightened. But, sir, I have also been told, though I can scarcely believe it, that you can also change yourself into the smallest of animals, a rat, for instance, or a mouse. I must confess, I think that is impossible." The ogre's vanity was pricked. "Impossible?" he roared. "You shall see."
Between one blink and the next, the massive ogre shrank down, until he was nothing more than a small gray mouse running across the floor. This was exactly what Puss had been waiting for. With a single pounce, the cat caught the mouse and ate him up. Just then, the king's carriage arrived at the drawbridge. The king, hearing the noise of the carriage wheels over the wooden planks, asked whose castle this was. Puss in Boots ran out to the courtyard, bowed low, and opened the carriage door. "Welcome, sire, to the castle of the Marquis of Carabas."
Welcome to the castle of the Marquis of Carabas.
"What, my lord Marquis?" cried the king, turning to the miller's son. "Does this castle also belong to you? There can be nothing finer than this courtyard and all the buildings around it. Let us go in." The miller's son offered his hand to the princess, and they followed the king into the great hall. There they found a magnificent feast already prepared. It had been meant for the ogre's friends, who were now too scared to enter. The king, charmed by the good qualities of the Lord Marquis of Carabas, and seeing the vast wealth he possessed, waited only until the wine had been poured. "It will be your own fault," said the king, "if you do not become my son-in-law, my dear Marquis." The miller's son, bowing low, accepted the honor that the king conferred upon him. He married the princess that very same day. As for Puss, he became a great lord. He never ran after mice anymore, except for his own amusement. And every now and then he would look at his fine leather boots and smile, knowing that a little wit and a lot of courage were worth more than all the mills and donkeys in the world.